Welcome to A Stark Realization, where in today's episode I sit down with Dr. Darrin Peppard, who is a school district superintendent, speaker, author, consultant, and former high school principal. In his expertise in school culture and climate, along with coaching and growing emerging leaders, has made him a leading voice in school leadership on the national level. Darrin was awarded the Jostens Renaissance Educator of the Year in 2005, Wyoming Secondary School Principal of the Year in 2016, and in 2019, Darrin was inducted into the Jostens Renaissance Hall of Fame. Darrin is the author of the upcoming book, The Road to Awesome: 6 Keys to Game-Changing School Leadership. I'm excited to have him here, and in just a moment, we'll be right with him. Good afternoon and welcome to A Stark Realization. Now, I have had some amazing guests, some wonderful dear friends, but today is a little bit different. And so hopefully you guys are okay with this. I am not going to be asking a whole ton of questions because I know this individual pretty well. He's an incredibly amazing and talented educator, a fantastic leader, a dear friend, and most important for me, my mentor. I'm excited to have here with me today Dr. Darrin Peppard. Thanks for joining us on the Stark Realization, Darrin.
Right on. Thanks, Bradley. It's my honor to be here, and I think it's gonna be a cool opportunity for you and I to kind of go back and forth, and for people to have an opportunity to kind of listen in on it. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm certainly glad that you're able to take some time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot happening, especially as a superintendent. That's a time-consuming venture. So we're going to jump right into our first question. This actually comes to us from Timothy out of Seattle. Why did you want to be a superintendent? What was the motivation to make that leap, that jump, and how's it been for you since you've taken on the leadership of an entire school district?
You know, that's actually a great question that Timothy has, and there are times I think I'd probably even go, why did I do this? What was I thinking? In going into this role, but I think I go back to when I first started down the road, I guess, working towards my doctorate degree, and kind of having that, kind of what was my why behind doing that. And a part of that was just wanting to continue to learn and to continue to push myself, to continue to have impact. But I didn't necessarily think at that time that I really wanted to be a superintendent. I didn't necessarily believe that leading an entire organization is what I truly wanted to do. During my last year as principal at Rock Springs High, I recall having a conversation with another friend of mine who's an educational leader as well. And they were working through in his district, changing some roles and changing some leadership for some individuals who had been in the same role for a very long time. And I recall telling him that, sometimes when you're in a role for a certain period of time, no matter how much energy or how much passion you bring to it, there get to be those points in time where maybe the message can feel a little bit stale, or maybe it's good to hear them through a different voice, or sometimes it's just good to challenge yourself a little bit differently. And as I'm talking through this with him about this other leader, I started to realize that I was really talking about myself, and that in the 11 years that I was at Rock Springs High, I look back and I feel like we moved a tremendous amount. And you reach a point where you think, what's next? And that last year or two that I was at Rock Springs High, I was starting to think a little bit more about what might be next, and kind of go through that whole process again, or maybe there's another role. And so I set out looking for a few different roles, and actually the role that I was the most intrigued in was this position that I ended up with. So being superintendent in a small district in north central Colorado, and I think I think what I'm learning about that role, to answer Timothy's question a little bit, is it's an opportunity for me to impact really an entire system, but to really drive change throughout a system as well.
Now, you're in a unique situation because you talk about
Yeah,
that impact. I mean, when you were a classroom teacher, you impacted primarily those students that you saw on a daily basis. When you
right.
moved to administration, you're now over a whole school. But
Mhm.
now in this, you start, how early are you starting with working with kids? You have a new program, right? With really, really
Yes.
young kids. Tell us
We
about that.
do. So yeah. So when I first came to Kremling, to West Grant School District, we're a K-12 school district. We do have a preschool that occupies 2 rooms in our district, but the preschool actually is not specifically West Grant School District. It's the Kremling preschool, who we have an incredible partnership with.
Cool.
But one of the challenges I was seeing early on was a real high turnover rate within our teachers. And the challenge was mostly in our youngest demographic of teachers. Um, Daycare was almost non-existent in our
Oh,
community. It's a very, very small community, which for me is something unique anyway. I'd never been in anything quite as small as where I am now, and I love it. But um, having only one licensed daycare provider that had a grand total of 6 spots for kids under the age of 3,
hmm,
um, that was a big challenge. And so we were seeing a lot of turnover in our teachers who just knew they weren't going to be able to find daycare. And so if they stayed in our community, or in our county for that matter, and had children, they were probably going to have to leave their job. So actually what we did was, we wrote a grant that was designed around retaining teachers through the Colorado Department of Education. And the way we wrote the grant was about opening an early childhood center. So
oh, wow.
now our early childhood center is open, and we accept kids as young as 6 months. So
Wow.
yeah, now I have this opportunity to impact from 6 months up through seniors in high school. um, and it's just so very unique. And
Yeah.
it was, as a principal, it was working with teachers. There's not a lot of operational management in that role. As a superintendent, the operational management stuff is quite a bit bigger. Certainly working with a technology department, a maintenance and custodial department, human resources, finance, um, nutrition services, just transportation. And just there's a lot of different pieces that go into this role that I didn't have as a high school principal.
Wow. That is amazing. That is such a neat opportunity. And as you said, unique indeed.
Well, and the learning curve was like, it was like a straight line up. It was like, holy cow, I haven't had the opportunity to work in this particular capacity. And so the first year, I think, was just all about learning my job. It really was. And then just building new relationships and getting to know people, and finding their strengths and areas that they could grow best. And but that would be true in any role, but learning that particular part of the role, learning actually a new state, a new system within the way Colorado and Wyoming operate from an educational perspective are quite a bit different. There are quite a bit of similarities, but
Mhm.
enough differences that, as a superintendent, learning all of the ins and outs around school finance and around and just the differences between how buildings are maintained and built in the state
Mhm.
of Colorado versus Wyoming. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
I,
Things a
I,
lot,
I could
yeah,
probably
things
tell
that
you
most
500 different
educators
things,
don't,
but
yeah, a lot of things educators just don't think
yeah,
about because
yeah, absolutely.
it's not what we do.
No, it's not. It's not necessarily the same as, like you were saying, when I was in the classroom. That boots on the ground right there. Sitting across from a kid. But another unique piece with my role, because we're a small district, under 500 students, I still have those opportunities to sit down and work one-on-one with kids, and
That's cool.
build relationships with my kids, and that type of thing. Where in a system of 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 students, that wouldn't be taking place.
Right. Well, that's great because that brings us to our next question. This comes from Vanessa, a principal in the Bay Area. How do you approach and recommend that you maintain and establish a good balance between your educational responsibilities and serving as a liaison to the community?
That is a fantastic question, and I think that that there is definitely a balance that you have to find there. Um, and it's probably more fluid than almost any other relationship that we work with. Um, Certainly the relationship between whether it's principal or superintendent and your staff members, that's going to be pretty consistent throughout. You're at least ideally you're going to be pretty close to the same person all the time, and you're going to have that same working relationship. But with your community, there's this interesting balance between pushing information quickly and gathering information, and then ideally being as proactive with stuff as you possibly can be.
Hmm.
The more work you do building proactively with your community, the better. But because the communication with community is so critical, when you get into those high tense type of situations, a threat on your campus, or God forbid, death of a student or death of a teacher, or those kinds of situations, that requires I'm at a loss for better words for it, but it requires a different type of communication.
True.
And it's the how you do it. I guess, Vanessa, what I would say is you do it through experience, and you do it by learning. There's not a handbook or simple, oh, if you just do it this way it'll always be successful, type of thing with building that balance with your community. But I think it probably, it comes back to something I said in, when we were talking in the last question. It comes back to relationships. It comes back to, building trust, and, building that equity within the community where everybody knows that they have an opportunity to have a voice, and that, if nothing else, when they come and sit down with you, or you come and sit down with them, that they know they're going to be heard, that they have an opportunity to truly get their voice out there. Whether it causes a change or it doesn't cause a change, at least they know that you're going to listen.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best thing you can do to start to build that balance, is just be available and listen. And I'll tell you, as a superintendent, I don't, or at least I try not to lead from my office. It's difficult to be successful and to have impact on anybody from your office. I do know that I probably have a day or a day and a half total out of the course of a week that I just, because of the nature of the job, I'm going to be in my office. But I try to spend as much time out in the public as I can. I refer to our local coffee shop here as my office away from office. Yeah, not just because I'm addicted to coffee, but because I think it's an opportunity for a lot of people to ask me questions in a really casual setting. And I think it's afforded me the opportunity to build relationships with people in the community that I wouldn't normally be able to do.
Absolutely. Now that's a different approach that you have, at least from my experience, in seeing the way that other administrators lead. They're simply, whether it's just simply by other people's practices or by the media or TV shows or film, there is simply a stigma that exists of the principal's office.
Oh yeah,
That if
sure.
you're a student and you get called to the principal's
Yeah,
office, you are in trouble. It still
yeah,
exists even as a teacher. If a teacher gets called to the principal's
yeah,
office, it's still immediately that angst just
yeah.
sets in. You're like, great, what did I do? And
Mhm.
so you have an approach where you kind of do away with that. You are out
Right.
in front.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose of that, and how has that helped in building those relationships of not calling people to the office, but you going to talk to people?
I just, I think first and foremost, for me, um, I guess, again, I'm at a loss for the right words for it, but the further away from the kids you get, so being in a superintendent role, you're quite a bit further away than you are as a teacher. You have more flexibility in terms of how your schedule can be constructed. So yeah, I'll give you a simple example. So I had a teacher who had sent me an email. This was last spring. And it, she just wanted to sit down and visit with me for a couple minutes. She just emailed and said, hey, I need 5 minutes of your time. When can you meet with me? And I had replied to her, tell me when your plan time is. let me know what time your plan is, and I'll be there. I'll come to you. Um, I had actually asked her principal what was going on. I knew what was coming. It wasn't a big deal. One of those deals where in our district, if you're going to take, or you need to take a day off before or after a holiday or something like that, then only the superintendent can approve it. It was an easy deal, and in that case, a lot of leaders probably would have just been like, hey, hey, so-and-so, I know what you're looking for, your day's approved. And that would have been that. But for me, I think it's always important that we take the opportunity to be face-to-face with our teachers, with our students, with our paraprofessionals, bus drivers, and on and on. So, I look for those opportunities. So in her case, went in and sat down with her on her prep, and she told me the story of what was going on. And I said, well, of course, that's approved. I don't have a problem with that at all. But then the real reason for me was that I could say, hey, how's it going? And in this particular situation, she just, here came the tears. And I knew she had a couple struggles with, some kids having some social emotional struggles in her classroom, but she just, it was probably 20 minutes of sharing her frustrations and her concerns and what she wanted to be able to do. And me asking her, what do you think you should do in those situations, rather than just tell her what to do. At the end of that conversation, I'll never forget this. And this is why I go to this example. I just asked her, I said, okay, what's one thing I can do to help you in these situations? And she said, what you just did, just come listen to me. She wasn't asking for answers. She just, heck, Bradley, this, 99% of the people that we might label as struggling or resistant or, not on board, they just want to be heard. So, that's true with teachers. That's true with community. It's true with kids. Just sit down and listen to them. And, when, when they come and sit in your office, it has a weird feel to it, so to me, getting out there, I have a meeting with a parent tomorrow who I know what he wants to sit and visit about, and it'll be a good conversation. But, when it was, well, hey, I'll meet with you at 9:00. And I said, okay, I'll meet you at the coffee shop. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, you don't need to come to my office. I'll come to you. You want me to come to your place of employment? I'll do that. No, we can meet at the coffee shop. That's good. So, it's just, it's being willing to take that step. It's a small thing, but, I know, in some of these examples that I share, I know how much it means to them that I'm willing to come to them.
Yeah. It makes a huge difference. We both speak so much on, if you front load and build relationships first, it saves so much time and you're able to accomplish so much more later. But when you just dive into work and that expectation and that relationship is not there, it makes it so hard. And yeah, I think any type of leader, whether it's educational leadership, business practice, anything, that you front load those relationships, it just makes things easy. It really does. Save the time. Save the energy.
It's interesting you say that. So we're working on a project in our district, and we're actually part of 8 districts in the state of Colorado that are working on this thing called the Homegrown Talent Initiative. And the whole concept is work-based learning. Whether that's internships or job shadowing or all kinds of different things. But one of the districts in our community or in our group is actually not being led by their superintendent. They're being led by a gentleman who has kids in the district. The superintendent's involved, don't get me wrong, but the gentleman's an executive for Boeing. And about a month ago, we were all together, having our most recent round of meetings about all this work we've been doing and listening to him. And I think he's a phenomenal leader. I really respect him. But he had shared with me how his leadership is changing because he's been working with school leaders through the course of this process. And he said, it used to be for me, I would just send an email and say, this is what we're going to do. And that's just how it goes. And he said, I find myself now having a lot more face-to-face conversations and building empathy and understanding around decisions that I'm making, rather than just, from on high, here's what we're going to do. And I found that very interesting. And I know even within, with what we do in education, there are still hundreds and hundreds of leaders who struggle with that exact thing, or maybe not struggle, they overlook it, or they take it for granted.
Yeah. Now I'll share a quick story just to put this into perspective from what I saw in working with Darrin at Rock Springs High. My previous experiences had always been, administrator comes in the room, the class would get quiet. Students would all quiet. They, whatever they were doing, they'd kind of put their head down and start working on something. And I was like, you guys, I want my administrator to see what my classroom really is, not what they think an administrator wants to see, because that doesn't help me improve. That doesn't help me get better. I want them to see that environment. And so if kids are talking and we're loud, they should see that. They should see active involvement. They should see what we're working on. But so many times, and that showed me that those relationships weren't there when a student, an administrator would walk in and kids would, they'd all turn in their seats. They'd open up a book or they'd start working, because now they weren't being true to themselves and they weren't being true to the classroom environment. They were trying to be what they thought an administrator wanted. And so I remember just how different those relationships were with the students to Dr. Peppard, and because of those relationships that were built. I still remember one time where you did come into my classroom, and instead of getting quiet and the kids switching something else, a student actually handed them a worksheet, and it was like, hey, this is what we're doing. And they just kept working, because they're like, this is what they wanted their administrator to see. They wanted to be genuine to me, to their teacher, and to what they were learning. And it wasn't this falsehood. It wasn't this fake attitude. The kids were just them. They were themselves. And that just immediately showed me, like, that does not happen if those relationships aren't established first and built into that curriculum. And that was unique. I had never seen that before. I had never experienced it. And that completely changed the way that I saw how a school leader should be. And it just showed me how much more you can get out of students, out of teachers, out of any employee when you front load that relationship, make it genuine, make them, they just said, let people know that they're heard, that they're valued, that they're respected. And boy, you can get so much better quality out of everybody when you take that time.
Yeah, well, so, and I appreciate you saying that. And this, I need like a little flashing sign, hey, rant alert, because I'm going to rant for a second. We are not in the test score business. I'll say it again. We are not in the test score business. We are in the people business. And so if we lose sight of the fact that our product is people, our machines are people. I mean, we are in the people business. So to me, if you're not treating people the way you want to be treated, if you're not enjoying what you're doing as part of the work that you're doing, if all you're doing is trying to crank out some kind of a score or some target of this is what our ideal graduate is, we're not building widgets. We're building people. So, that's why I lead from that place. It's why I'm so passionate about that. That's
absolutely. Well, certainly
that's who I am, and that. So,
yeah. All right. Next question. Anonymous educator from Mississippi. You have received multiple awards, accolades, and recognitions, as was mentioned in your bio. They say, but I want to know, what has been your greatest contribution to the schools you have worked in?
Whew. Well, that's a good question. I hope that the thing that I've contributed most to the schools I've worked in is passion. That I've brought an energy and a love and a thirst for growing people. And I hope that my biggest contribution is that I'm doing that I'm providing the leadership that's needed for all of us in those schools to feel like we're all pulling on the same end of the rope and trying to do the best by every single one of our kids. That's a really good question. I like that one.
All right, we're gonna kind of go lightning round on this next part.
Okay.
So
here we go.
Quick questions.
Get loose. Make sure I'm ready. Yeah.
And then if there's something that really stands out, we'll spend a little more time and we'll jump back to it. All right, so here we go. You ready?
Yep.
Number one, how do you motivate and encourage your staff?
You love them. You love them. I mean, it's as simple as that. Not to keep banging on this drum, but it's pretty much the only drum I carry around. It's about relationships. Treat them like people, get to know them, know who their kids are, know what they're interested in. You don't just have to talk about state standards. You can talk about some trail that I was out jeeping on, or that, I've got a handful of staff, and there was such a unique place. I love it here so much, but not this time of year, but in the summertime, I have this group of staff members who actually, they go paddle boarding on a couple of the different, there's like 5 or 6 bodies of water right here in the area, and they do yoga on their paddle boards. So, I mean, I know that about them, and I joke with them about that. And I also, tell them if I tried to do that, I would fall in the water. But you gotta love them. It's that simple. Love them.
All right. From a superintendent's viewpoint, what role should parents play in your schools?
Parents got to be parents. I know that may seem, real base level, but one of the challenges I think we face in education right now is we have a percentage, every school has these, that the parents just want to be the kid's friend. And so as a result, we end up having to be the parent too. It's in education, it's not our job to raise the kids. Yes, it takes a village. We're all involved in this, including the parent. Mm-hmm. So, I think the biggest thing that the parent needs to do is to truly be a partner. Take on their role seriously, listen, share their voice, because we want to make sure we're listening to them. But I really want parents to know that, taking to Facebook or, bashing a coach or bashing a teacher, all that does is undermine the process. It might get you a few likes on Facebook, but that's not what it's about. It's about growing a person. So, when parents are partners with us, and we're partners with parents, I mean, it's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. Then I think everybody has a chance to benefit.
Awesome. And what professional goals have you set for yourself for the next 5 years?
Next 5 years, that's interesting. So I don't envision myself leaving this superintendency for another one. I really don't. I love the district that I'm in. I love the work we're doing. So my professional goals really are more around impacting a lot more leaders all over the country and all over the world. So I know we'll talk about it in a few minutes, but I'm working on a book that should be done relatively soon and out. Well, I would love to see it out in 2020, if not real early 2021. Growing and expanding my opportunity to speak and to consult with other leaders. Those are the types of things that I really focus on. In addition to, my district being absolutely the best district it can possibly be.
Awesome. So let's perfect segue, because that is what we want to talk about next. So you do have a book in the pipeline that you're working on.
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about the book. When someone gets that in their hands, what is it going to do for them? What's the content of it, and how is it going to help them become a better leader?
Well, so really, what this one's all about, and the whole idea behind this particular book is, and actually the working title right now is The Road to Awesome: 6 Keys to Game-Changing School Leadership. What I would like this book to be about, and what I would like it to be for others who read it, is a way of looking at leadership through your own core values. I outline very clearly what I see as my core values and how I lead from those values. But I think that, a book is only as good as what you're able to do with it. So, looking at those key elements around activating your staffaldy's voice, activating your student voice, building that awesome school culture and climate, and creating spaces where kids and teachers feel like they can be innovative without fear of reprisal, where they can really truly take big steps forward, are things that all of us as leaders need to be working on. The goal in this book is not only to outline those things, but then to also help leaders and leadership teams build their own action plan around what are you going to do. and then really to reflect on the process, because I think coaching is such an essential element, and it's something that I think is overlooked in so many different leadership books. There's a lot of, hey, do this, do this, do this, but there's never really that thought around who's going to coach you. Because no matter who's doing something, they can benefit from coaching. I'm real fortunate. I have another superintendent in my county right here, and another one not too far away, that I bounce a lot of ideas off of, that I'm able to get some feedback from them. We know for teachers, having an instructional coach is a huge tool.
True.
Still has not made the strides in education that it should. But then I would advocate on the leadership side that school leaders should have coaches, because it's that opportunity to get that genuine feedback, to have somebody that's a sounding board for you, that gives you the time and the space and that type of stuff, so you have an opportunity to grow and develop. So what I've done with this book again is I've really kind of pulled back to, here are my core beliefs, in essence, my leadership manifesto. And the book is written from that perspective. And hopefully it'll serve as something that'll motivate other leaders to really take a step back and say, okay, I know what I believe in, but do I take what I believe in and carry it forward in how I lead my schools? Mm-hmm. Or am I simply just channeling what others, the outside rhetoric is telling me I should focus on? I'll tell you, in my district, my teachers, my board members, my administrators, every single one of them, and probably most of my community would tell you, I don't believe very heavily in test scores. They have a place, but I don't, by any stretch of the imagination, think that we should be out there chasing test scores, or we should be basing, any decisions that we're doing just on, a couple of days of testing in the spring, that they just represent a small piece of the puzzle. So, I very much want this book to represent, the passion I have for leadership, the values that I have in leadership. And again, hopefully it's something that others can take and put in their hand and say, okay, this gives me an opportunity to say, here's what I believe in, here's how I want to do it, here's how I'm going to get some feedback and hold myself accountable to what I say I'm going to do.
That's great. Well, we definitely look forward to getting that book. So keep up the good work.
Oh, thanks.
I know the hashtag Road to Awesome was basically non-existent before 2015.
Yeah.
I think there were only, when we did some research, it was like, I think two published tweets prior to 2015 that had Road to Awesome. And then summer of 2015, it exploded. It just
took off, didn't it? Yeah.
This amazing thing. And I love it. I love the story, the history of it. And our listeners, when they get their hands on that book and get a chance to really dive in and read and learn about it.
Yeah.
And again, so I know you and I are both, we wear our hearts on our sleeve. I'm trying to get too emotional sometimes, but I've been reading with my wife. She's a third grade elementary teacher, Melissa, and they've been studying in their school a book about trauma and how you can't discipline trauma out of a child. You cannot educate discipline out of a child. Discipline is there, trauma is there. It exists. It's real, and you never know how it may manifest or what it may be. And I didn't even realize some of the trauma from my own life that I was dealing with while still trying to educate others. And it was a difficult thing, and it led to an incredible amount of self-doubt in my skills and in my education. And so for me, having somebody believe in me and tell me that my ideas had value, that my skills had value, that I could make a difference, I didn't realize just how much I needed that. But it came from a place of trauma, because I didn't have that. I was constantly questioned and even ridiculed, and it really affected who I was as a person. So as we go back to that road to awesome, it all started when at a Jostens Renaissance National Conference that Dr. Peppard was invited to speak at, and said, "Hey, I want you to I want you to present with me. And that moment was such a profound moment in my life and as a career and as an educator. And I know for you, it may have just been, hey, I've done this before. I'm going to have somebody else help me out, or maybe he has something to contribute. I don't really know the full motivation of what led you to that moment, but it may have just been a casual thing. It may have just been, for you, it could have just been a Thursday. But for me, that moment was one of the most defining moments of my life. And so it definitely, it's led me on the path to where I am today. It's allowed me to start to overlook some of those moments of self-doubt, because I was able to say, you know what, there are other educators who I admire, who I look up to, who I respect, and they see value in what I have to offer, even in those moments where I didn't. And that made a huge difference. So again, thank you for that nice Thursday. And
was it actually a Thursday?
I do believe it was.
Yeah, I remember the conversation, and I just, you and I had talked a lot about culture and climate, and it was clear that, I mean, you get it. You absolutely do get it when it comes to culture and climate. So it wasn't just an in passing thing. And I'm forever grateful that, that I am now part of your story and you're part of my story. And, the road to awesome certainly has bloomed from there. So.
Indeed. And so our listeners may not get the full appreciation of this, but our viewers, those of you that are watching this on the videos, you're going to see this. So now I'm going to ask you to do something a little silly here, just so guys you get a point of, this was not planned. This was not even discussed. Go ahead and raise your left hand for me. Okay. You're going to laugh at this. Look at my watch.
That's pretty good. If you had shown up in your Be Good to People shirt, then that would have been really crazy.
Yeah. We're wearing the same style watch, even the same color watch band. Okay, yeah. That's too funny.
Yeah, great minds, right? Yeah.
Yep, indeed. So
forever connected.
Exactly. So another aspect that you mentioned is that coaching, that consulting. Yep. So you've been working with some other school districts. Tell us a little bit about that, and if then we have somebody who would like that opportunity, that they would like to reach out with you and get some of that, how do they get in touch with you? Yeah. And what services can you offer them to help improve their schools?
Yeah. So yeah, this is something that's relatively new for me, just really this particular school year. The speaking's been happening for a while, but again, I'm so passionate about watching other leaders grow. I think about, the year that you spent on the leadership team with me in Rock Springs, and the other leaders that were a part of that team, and just watching them grow and watching you grow, and others who kind of came through that process, and seeing, where they go and what happens, has really become kind of this core passion of mine. I have in my district, I have four school leaders who my two principals each only have 3 years of experience, and my assistant principals less than that. So, on a daily basis, I'm helping them grow and giving them feedback and asking, the key questions, not telling them what to do, but asking, what do you want to do, or what would you like to try, to help them grow. So when I contract with another district, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different possibilities that can happen. And so one particular district, I'll use them as an example. I'm contracted with the entire district, and I do a phone conversation every other week with the superintendent. And, we're talking about all of the different leaders in that district, but really more about her role as a superintendent, and what are the things she can do to help grow her leaders. Just like as building principals, the most important thing you can do to grow your kids is to grow your teachers. Mm-hmm. I would say, at the district level, the most important thing you can do is to grow your leaders. So, I'm helping her with that process, but then I'm also coming out periodically on site and spending time with their high school principal, and really supporting him with just understanding the enormity of the role of the principal. When this is my 25th year in education, and I would tell you the role of the principal in that time has changed tremendously. Probably even just in the last 10, 12 years, the role of the principal has changed dramatically. Back to the question that Vanessa had earlier about, that balance in community. You talked about the principal's office, and, I mean, almost no principals actually do discipline anymore. I mean, that's not what their role is. They have somebody else who will do the bulk of that, but um, they need to focus on being not just instructional leaders, because that's the thing that I think we hear a lot about, is being instructional leaders. And so definitely, when I come into a district, or in this particular one where I'm going to this one particular high school, I'm helping that person with the instructional leadership side, but he's fairly strong there. So what we're really concentrating on in his particular role is the other side of it. Those hidden pieces in being a high school principal, or a principal at any level, around, time management, relationship building, organizational management, easily overlooked, but one of the most important pieces. I mean, understanding and owning your budget, being able to work with all of the folks on the operational side of your building, making sure that communication is really strong and clear, both proactive and reactive, those types of things. So when I'm working with a district or an individual school, we're identifying areas that are strong, but then we're also identifying things that we can target and we can grow.
Mm-hmm.
And then typically we'll do a check-in call, once a week, and, spend about an hour, set some short-term goals. What are some things you can do to grow for next week? Give me some feedback on how things went this week, and then periodically come out and do the on-site visits.
That's awesome. So someone wants to take advantage of that. How do they get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is right on my website. So roadtoawesome.net. There's a link on there that you can email me. Also my phone number is on there. All that kind of stuff. There's within the page, or within the website, there are multiple pages. One that is specific for coaching and consulting.
Great.
Yeah. So that's probably the best way is through the website.
Okay. And then also getting just some inspiration and some ideas from you. Social media, you're quite active.
Social media. Absolutely.
How do they reach you on social media?
Yeah. So I am Darrin Peppard on basically everything, at Darrin Peppard on Twitter. My Facebook page is Darrin M. Peppard. And then I'm Darrin Peppard also on Instagram and LinkedIn. So yeah, you can reach me on all of those. And of course the hashtag Road to Awesome, you can always find stuff that I'm putting out there through the hashtag Road to Awesome.
And I love your pep talks. Those are fantastic. Yeah. Just little short, motivational, inspirational, educational thoughts, and they're great. So definitely get on that social media and check those out, because they're very good, very timely, very helpful, and just small little nuggets of wisdom coming from Peppard himself. So they're a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of.
Yeah.
One last question that I know I had a lot of questions that came in, but this one is a good. This comes from Dustin out of the Tucson area. And he says, I'm still on the fence about moving from a classroom teacher to an administrator. Mm-hmm. First part, how do you know when you're ready? And second, what's your best piece of advice when you become a new administrator?
So I think you just know when you're ready. You'll find yourself thinking, kind of like I talked about earlier, moving from that principal role into being a superintendent. Your mind will just be focusing on what's next, or starting to think a little bit more about, how can I impact more kids? I remember making the leap myself from classroom teacher and coach to being an assistant principal. And when I first started in education, all I ever wanted to be was a head coach. I wanted to be a head basketball coach, and I was. And there came this point where it was very clear to me and very comfortable for me to say, okay, I can walk away from coaching. I knew I'd have a great team the next year, but I felt like, hey, this is the point where, I want to impact more than, the 50 kids in my basketball program and the, 150 kids I see every day in the classroom. I want to impact more kids than that. And yeah, so you just kind of know. As far as advice, there's actually a section I wrote in the book that if I could go back and give rookie principal Darrin Peppard a little bit of advice, it would be, you don't have to do it all yourself. I think especially early career principals, the mistake that's real common, I see this in the consulting stuff, and honestly in myself, when I became a principal, I thought I had to do it all. I thought I had to be the person who had the answer to every question. Um, I thought I had to be, the loudest voice at the table or the smartest person in the room. And the reality is that is so far from the truth. The best thing you can do as a leader is to talk a lot less, listen a lot more, think a lot more, and heap a lot of praise on the other really smart people that are in the room. That's truly what being a leader is. You know, instead of telling people, here's what you should do, ask them, what do you think you'd like to do? Most likely they're going to talk themselves to the place where you probably would have guided them anyway, but allow them and honor them and value them enough that they learn how to solve their own problems. If it's all about you solving other people's problems, you're not growing anybody. You're hoarding all the information. So that would be the biggest piece of advice I'd have.
That's fantastic. Well, Dustin, the fact that you're listening to educational podcasts about leadership, you are writing questions to educational leaders. I think that tells me that you're in that right direction. You're already starting to think about it. So definitely go for it and go change lives, man. Make a difference. Yeah. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Get out there and find the right fit for you, man. There's the right fit for everybody as a leader.
Absolutely. Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, Darrin, it has been an incredible pleasure. Always your insight, information, just the way that you view and approach education. It's exciting, it's refreshing, and it's incredibly effective. So hopefully that does help some of our listeners as they see what they can do. And we're definitely going to be looking forward to your book. So keep us posted on that. And we'll look forward to hopefully again, later this year or early 2021. Yeah. That'll be an exciting opportunity. And those that are in that position where if you'd like to have some coaching, some consultation from Dr. Peppard, you've got that information now. Reach out. If you need some professional development, you're needing just some workshops, anything to take place at your schools, bring them into your district, and I know it will make a huge impact. And especially you get to learn about that relationship building component from him. In my opinion, nobody does it better. So give him a call.
Thanks. Yeah. Right. Awesome, Brad. I appreciate it. And I got to compliment you. The Stark Realization podcast is fantastic. And I've really been enjoying it. You've had some great guests on there. So it's just, I'm honored to have an opportunity to be one of them.
Thanks so much. And thanks again for all you do for your mentorship and support, and most importantly for your friendship. Always valued.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody go have a road awesome day.
That's right. Thanks for tuning in to A Stark Realization, and we will keep you posted on who our upcoming guest is. And we're going to be announcing that on Wednesday, so definitely look for that. It's going to be a good one. Have a great day.